Hello, I'm Robert, volunteer fact checker and helping you feel scared of many things. And this is another very simple thing that I'd just like to explain in this video. So, for the last year, Zelensky has been asking for an immediate ceasefire, and he has not agreed to any of Putin's demands to give him Kromatorsk and other cities before ceasefire. And this is being running in a very strange way in the mainstream media. They're not explaining it properly at all. They give the impression it's a huge concession for Zelensky to stop along the current line. That's what he's asked for the last year. And the reason he doesn't accept Putin's requests for ceasefire is because of this demand that Zelensky gives him cities. So Putin has said, he's willing to stop to agree to a ceasefire so long as before the ceasefire even starts, that Ukraine must give him Kromatorsk, which is about the size of the UK city of Blackpool, and several other cities in Donbas. And then then Putin gives a pinky swear that if they give him Kromatorsk and these other cities, which he has been he is nowhere near them, but he aspires to get them eventually, but he's got no chance. He's not even on the outskirts of Kromatorsk or anywhere near it. And this is very much territory that he wants because they're fortified cities on a high ground that would give him a huge advantage for the next stage of his operations. And he says, if you just give me these fortresses that we have no chance of taking, then he promises, and of course not a very sincere sounding promise, he promises that if they give him all that, then after that he will talk to Zelensky and they can arrange a ceasefire. He won't even talk to Zelensky before he gives him these cities. And Zelensky says to Trump, I can't do that. And he has it's not just because it'd be absolutely daft and stupid for him to do that, because obviously Putin would just keep fighting and he wouldn't even do a proper ceasefire after that. He might do it for one day and say, look, Ukraine has broken the ceasefire, and keep going. But apart from that, it would be utterly stupid that Zelensky can't even do this, because it would just be like if a UK Prime Minister, suppose a UK Prime Minister, and it doesn't need to be anything to do with the war, suppose the UK Prime Minister just got into his head that he wanted, or say the leader of Ireland said, I want Blackpool to the UK Prime Minister, then could the UK Prime Minister just give the Blackpool to Ireland? Maybe, suppose, for instance, during the Brexit negotiations, and suppose the people in Ireland had said, in Southern Ireland, they said, we would like Blackpool as part of those negotiations somehow, for some reason. It just wouldn't be possible. It's not something that the Prime Minister can give away. So the only way to give up Blackpool would be to have a referendum, and then the citizens of Blackpool would have a referendum about whether they want to become part of Ireland, and the British people would be involved in this referendum, just like the independence referendum for Scotland. And so Zelensky can't give away cities. It's exactly the same law. It's slightly different. In the Ukraine, they're not allowed to have a referendum either during wartime. That's part in the Ukrainian constitution, because it's just not practical during the war. And they, in some countries, can have referendums during the war. Ukraine can't. And it's the Ukrainian judiciary that interpret the Ukrainian legal system, and they say it's very clear that they can't have a referendum during wartime. So there is no legal possibility for Zelensky to do this, because he would have to have a referendum before ceasefire in order to give away the cities before ceasefire. And that's just not possible at all. So he explains this to Trump, and then Trump doesn't believe him, so then all the other European allies of him, they go and explain this to Trump, and eventually Trump accepts that this is not something that Zelensky is going to do, and so he goes back to Putin and says, he can't do that. And that's been going on for last year. And it's gone through that entire cycle 2 or 3 times. And then he says, Putin's clearly not being sincere. And then Putin comes back to him and says, look, Zelensky is not giving me these cities. So that shows he's not interested in peace. And then Putin then relays that to Zelensky, and Zelensky then comes back to Putin and explains all that again, and his allies explain all that again, and then Trump once more goes back to Putin, says, look, they are sincere about peace, they want to have a ceasefire, they just can't give you these cities, and then Trump says that shows they're not sincere, and it's going round in circles, but each time it's just a little bit different, and each time Trump has a little bit more support for Zelensky and more understanding that actually Zelensky can't do this, and he's got more understanding that Zelensky wants a ceasefire, which is just cutting things up the way that it is. And so that's what's been happening, and that's been the story for the last 6 months. And so that is the simple reason why Zelensky, he's been asking for an immediate ceasefire all the way through. And Trump has very slowly realised that this means that Putin is not interested in peace at this point, because he wouldn't ask this nonsensical question if he was interested in peace. The only reason that Putin would ask for these fortress cities is because they would give him a strategic advantage, so that he could immediately break the ceasefire and keep going. There's no other sensible reason for asking for them. So hope that helps you can understand. And then yes, I just say briefly. So yes, and I want. And I'll talk about that. Right, lots of short videos. I think that's a better way to do it. So I'll continue on this in another follow-up video, and then I'll do another follow-up video also on how far that Putin has got in Ukraine. So I'll embed these short videos into it.